Hey guys, Michael here from michaelsherlock.com. Today I want to talk about Foxconn. There's been a lot of controversy in the news media recently about Apple and Foxconn and poor working conditions and just how absurd it is and how Apple's not doing their fair share and how they're profiting immensely and the people that are actually making this are living in ruins. And I've been following this, and I recently watched a Nightline special from ABC on this, and I wanted to kind of just give you my 2 cents. I really haven't spoken about this or written anything about this, and I just want to give you, just a little bit of feedback, just a little bit of my opinions on kind of this information that we have now. So there's 2 points that I want to kind of preface before I go into this, and this kind of has to go into how you look at this situation. First and foremost, you have to consider that this is China. This isn't the United States, this isn't Western Europe, but this is China. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not using this as a defense for poor working conditions, but you do have to take into consideration the lens at which you're looking at this situation versus the lens of which the people who are working on these assembly lines, the people that are running these assembly lines, and the government of this country that is regulating or supposedly regulating this business, and not just Foxconn but all the manufacturers in China. You just really have to consider that when you're evaluating this. Also, Foxconn and other manufacturers like this, the immense production they produce is such a driving force in China's economy. The last few decades, China's economy has grown into a very strong boom stage of development, and that is really attributed to the immense amount of production that Foxconn and other manufacturers have in this country. So you have to take into consideration the GDP boost that this Foxconn company has for the Chinese economy. And another thing I just want to look at is Foxconn does produce Apple products. Clearly, we know that. Apple has mentioned it, and Apple's taking the brunt for the Foxconn problems. But other companies like Nintendo, Dell, HP, and many, many more also use Foxconn assembly lines. And so the point I'm trying to make is Apple is the biggest, obviously, and they're taking the brunt of the issues and of the criticism from the media, from bloggers, all that. But that's a little bit unfair just because they're the market leader. And it's just also interesting to keep in mind that other companies, too, are participating in these same practices. So let's just get a little background on Foxconn. First of all, employees work 12-hour shifts with 2 one-hour meal breaks, so 10 hours total of work in a 12-hour shift. The meals cost about 70 cents, so $1.40 is what you're going to be paying for your 2 meal breaks. And of course, a lot of people go ahead and take naps. Some of the criticism says that, these people are taking naps because they're completely and totally exhausted. Other people are saying that it's a tradition to take a rest after a meal. I don't really know. I'm not an expert on Chinese customs, but I'll just present that to you. They're going to be making $1.78 an hour, which, again, if we're looking through the Western lens, seems completely absurd. But when you look at it compared to what other people in China are making, it actually seems like a very reasonable price. And there's also speculation that Foxconn will be increasing wages as well in the future. One thing to keep in mind also, all the media is saying, oh, these are terrible jobs, everybody's so upset, it's horrible. Then why is there such immense demand for Foxconn jobs? Because people are flocking to Foxconn from all the way from different parts of Asia, particularly China, to specifically work at Foxconn. Why is that? A, because there's not a lot of other places to work besides these big manufacturing companies, and B, Foxconn clearly has the jobs and the revenue coming in to support this immense workforce. Obviously, Foxconn isn't perfect, but if it was horrible, if they were paying 50 cents an hour and abusing their workers, making them work 18-hour shifts, clearly people wouldn't work there with the immense demand that people are trying to get jobs at Foxconn. One thing I also want to talk about is the suicides. It's been well documented that a couple years ago there was a huge cluster of suicides, and after that Apple came in and they looked through the process and they said, Foxconn, put up these nets. So they put up suicide nets, and the pictures of buildings with nets around them is one that is ingrained in the minds of many people. But one thing I found interesting was the Foxconn suicide rates are actually lower than the average suicide rates for Chinese companies, That's actually a pretty interesting statistic. Now, it could be a little bit skewed because of the sheer volume of Foxconn employees versus the volume of employees at other companies. But if we just look at the sheer percentage or the sheer rate of suicides, it's actually lower at Foxconn than these other companies. So that's another interesting thing to keep in mind. Now, obviously, again, when we're looking through this from the Western lens, it seems like they're working huge shifts and getting paid very little. I'm trying to be as objective as possible here when I say, I think that even though perhaps the human rights, the human resources, those levels are clearly not as high in China, and that's a problem, no doubt about it. It needs to improve. But with that said, in terms of differentiating Foxconn from other companies that work in China, I think it's safe to say that they're on average, if not a little bit better than other companies, because Apple has come in and has demanded improvements and is openly, auditing this place and is allowing journalists in for the first time. It's a very interesting thing to consider that even though in the news it seems like Foxconn is the devil and Apple is profiting from this, but when you actually objectively analyze it, it seems like, they're actually doing a little bit of a better job, if not the same job, as all these other places. So that's just my 2 cents on Foxconn. It's obviously not a place where I would work or a lot of you guys would want to work either. But when you live in that part of the world in those circumstances, it's not the worst place to be. That's just my 2 cents on it. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comment section below on Foxconn. Am I being mean? Am I not getting it? I'd love to see what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.